Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Facebook Live virtual meeting to discuss proposed hunting regulations for the 2023 through 2025 seasons. I'm Tina Johannsen. I'm one of the assistant chiefs in the game management section of the Wildlife Resources Division. I'm going to give you guys a short presentation this evening about some proposals that we're putting forward. But what we really are looking for tonight is you guys' input. Just as a reminder, if you'd like to make an official comment, you'll need to do so via email to gm.comments@dnr.ga.gov. We'll show that information again at the end of the presentation. Once we've done the presentation, we will also do a live Q&A session to answer some common questions that folks may have for us. And of course, you can always email us your questions or comments after the presentation. So just a quick little background information about how we do our regulations here. So every regulation in our regulation guide goes through a 4-point filter. The first one, of course, is this proposal biologically appropriate and scientifically sound? In other words, is it going to hurt the resource? Because if something could potentially hurt the long-term persistence of our wildlife resources, we're not going to propose that. That's a complete stop right there if it doesn't pass that filter. Once we determine that, and we're like, okay, this is something that's not going to hurt the resource, the next almost as important question is, what does the public want? What do our hunters want? What do the users want? What do the folks out there in Georgia want to see happen with this particular resource? So if it's a hunting season date change, or a new season, or a shift in a bag limit, all of those things, people may have different feelings about them, and we want to be responsive to that to the extent that we possibly can. This third point, believe it or not, we really do strive for simplicity and flexibility within our regulations. If it seems a bit complicated, a lot of times that has to do with our efforts to maximize opportunity. And so we try wherever possible to keep our regulations as straightforward as we possibly can. And the fourth filter is, what impact might this have on our efforts to recruit, retain, and reactivate hunters? As most of you know, hunters are a fairly small percentage of the overall population in Georgia. Most people are supportive of hunting, but they don't necessarily participate. And we want to be cognizant that our regulations and rules don't potentially infringe on the ability of people to participate in hunting. So the timeline for this is rather lengthy. It's about a 5-month process. And if that seems a little long and burdensome, keep in mind that the goal here is to put forward regulations that are good regulations. And in order to do that, we need to have a lot of public comment. We are a government agency. We need participation from our constituents. This meeting and the in-person meetings that we had last week are our January public input meetings, where we propose a few things that have been on our mind for the last 2 years that we would like input on, but we're keenly interested in what does the public have to say. It's a completely open forum. Any change to a hunting regulation that you would like to see or suggest, we want to hear about that. What'll happen from February to March is we'll synthesize all of that information and feedback, and we'll develop our quasi-final proposals that we will take to the DNR board committee. That committee meets in March, and they will decide whether or not our proposals move on in the process. If they approve those, which if we've done our homework, they will, we go to another public comment period in April, and we'll have 3 in-person meetings, North, Central, and South Georgia, and another virtual meeting to gather input about the very specific regulations that we've put forward. All of that information will be available in April on our website so that you can look at exactly what we're proposing and comment on that. Then we will synthesize that again. We will take into consideration any changes or tweaks that may be needed, and then in May we'll go to the full board and they will consider the changes that we're putting forward and approve those. Once those are approved in late May, then in June, we put together the popular hunting guide. That's what you see out on the floor in Walmart and other sporting goods stores. And we have that available for everyone in July. couple of background points to remember when we're talking about these regulations. There are statutes, which are passed by the General Assembly, your elected officials, and then there are rules, which are what the DNR board passes. So we can be more restrictive than what the state law that the legislature passes says we can be, but we can't be more liberal. And so this past legislative session, we did have a couple of changes that were passed by the legislature, and those did impact some rules that we went ahead and made changes to this past summer. So specifically, we had House Bill 1147. This eliminated the closed season and bag limit for raccoons and possums on private land. All methods that are currently lawful for the take of these species is now lawful year-round on private lands, but other regulations and license requirements relative to pursuing those two species do still apply. On WMAs, we did expand hunting opportunity by about 61 days. So now our season runs from August 15th to February 28th. It is closed during open quota hunts, and in some cases where we may specify that an area is closed to that season, but there is no bag limit. We removed the bag limit from raccoons. There wasn't one on possums. And all other public land license requirements and restrictions do still apply. As far as trapping on our WMAs, that will remain unchanged. It is by permit only on certain designated WMAs, which are listed here. If you're interested in trapping on a WMA for any fur bearer species, you can contact that region office for permit details. So as I mentioned, we had two bills that passed. The other one was 1148. That was passed during this past session, and basically this bill made it unlawful to bring an intact deer carcass into the state of Georgia from any state, not just those with reported cases of CWD. So basically you can bring in boned out meat, taxidermy products, all of the things listed in our hunting guide that you could bring in from any state that has CWD. Now that rule applies to all other states. So when we're making these proposed changes, some of them are fairly minor. They are basically housekeeping changes that correct an error or make something more clear. So for example, if you're drawn for a big game quota hunt and you need to bring someone with you who is not hunting, they have a license, but they don't have a firearm or archery equipment with them, they are simply there to help you drag a deer out of the woods or to help you get a stand into the woods. Those kinds of sort of physical assistance that you may need, we're clarifying that. Another clarification item is that alligator hunters can sell a lawfully harvested hide. We had an error where the regulation conflicted with the statute, and someone happened to notice that and was interested in purchasing a hide from someone else, and so we're going to fix that. Some of our changes are a little more substantial. One that we are proposing is to increase the number of alligator permits. This would be an increase of 100 tags that will be distributed across the 9 alligator zones. We are also proposing an extended archery season be applied to Richmond County. Once a county reaches a population of 500 people per square mile, we do offer that extended archery season to try to give those suburban areas more opportunity to control deer numbers. We're also making some pretty substantial proposals to changes for Southwest Georgia. We're proposing to shift that season to accommodate the fact that they do have a later rut. And I'll step aside here so you guys can see the counties. These are the counties that are being proposed as part of this zone, where we would have the first 2 weeks of archery season would be buck only to accommodate late fawn weaning. We would extend the firearm season to the maximum statutory limit, which is January the 15th. We would extend archery season to January 31st. Again, that is a hard date that is set by the legislature in statute. And these counties are being proposed based on data from does that we have recently been collecting as part of a research project down there. So it is based on biology, not just anecdotal evidence. Proposing several changes relative to bears. One is fairly minor. We're going to require a game check for all 3 zones. Previously, it was only the northern zone. In the northern zone, we are also going to allow hunters to go to participating taxidermists and meat processors to have those animals tagged. So you'll still be required to take your animal to a check station or game management office to get that animal tagged, let us pull a tooth, get a DNA sample, but we're going to offer up a lot more locations where you can get that done. And then one of those housekeeping changes, we're going to stipulate that bears harvested in the southern zone have to be taken for tagging within 24 hours of harvest. And that's just to prevent a loophole where somebody might not take their bear in to be tagged at all. For the central bear zone, smallest bear population, shortest season, longest slide. What we're proposing for that central Georgia bear population in those 4 counties where we have a 1-day season is that we offer the potential for a second day. That second day of the season would be 3 weeks later. It would be the first Saturday in January after New Year's Day. And we would only offer that season if fewer than 6 bears, female bears, were harvested on day 1. So the goal there is to minimize the harvest of adult females. We know from research done by UGA via a population viability analysis that we've got to keep total annual mortality low, especially for females in that population, in order for it to persist on the landscape. But if there's bad weather on that December 1st day, or if by chance we have a low number of females harvested, we want to be able to offer that second day of opportunity. Now, for our wildlife management areas, we always have a long list of minor changes, date shifts, open this, close that. Once those are approved by the DNR Board Wildlife Committee at the March meeting, those will be posted here on our website for you to make comments. So if there is something to do with your favorite WMA where you do most of your hunting, certainly send us those comments, but be sure to look in April to see what changes we've proposed specifically, and you can comment on those as well. If you have questions about a specific WMA, let us know, and we can send that to the specific region office, or you can contact that region office directly yourself to get those very specific questions answered. Why is this gate closed? Or, what's going on with prescribed burning or some other habitat activity? You can contact the region office and they'll be happy to explain it. And with that, I'm going to wrap up my presentation. We're going to give you guys a few minutes to get your questions in and let the team here in front of me go through there, and they're going to pitch some of these questions to me to answer live. We won't be able to get to every question, but we'll try to get to as many as we can. And if we can't get to it today, we'll try to look at those in the future. And you can always email here at GM Comments. That's just another name for yours truly. I read all the emails. I try to get all the questions answered. And we really want to hear you guys' comments from those. I'm back, here to answer your questions.
In consideration for year-round feral hog hunting on public land?
That's a good question, and it's one that we hear fairly regularly. Why can we not hunt feral hogs on public land year-round? And certainly we understand why folks would want to do that. Hunting hogs is a lot of fun, and hogs do a lot of damage to habitat. And the reason that we don't throw open the gates and let folks hunt year-round is multifaceted. One reason is that hunting hogs does not control hogs, right? The whole point of regulated sport hunting is to not get rid of the particular species you're hunting. And so what we're trying to do to really get a grip on hog numbers is trapping. Whole sounder trapping is by far the best way to actually reduce hog numbers. In order for us to effectively trap, we need to minimize disturbance. We need to bait a site for several days. We need to get a trap set up. So that particular effort in and of itself, we need to reduce access. But another reason is that our WMAs serve multiple purposes. A lot of them have sensitive plant communities, some have threatened and endangered species, and they all have game species that are dropping fawns or nesting or otherwise rearing young during the late spring and summer. And so once turkey season closes, we're trying to reduce disturbance on that area, and disturbance to those animals when they're trying to reproduce and raise their young. A third facet to that is our habitat management activities. During hunting season, we try to minimize disturbance. There are things we do have to do. A timber harvest may have to be scheduled during a hunt. Prescribed burning is something that we need just the right weather for, and so we need as many days as possible, but we do try to do those activities when the area is otherwise closed. A fourth reason is damage to our roads. Our roads is one of the biggest expenses we have on our wildlife management areas. And unfortunately, all it takes is one jackleg out there in their four-wheel drive spinning through all of the mud holes, and we've got a road that's impassable. And so all of those factors combine to just really make it impossible for us to just have those areas open all the time for any activity, including feral hog hunting.
Will the state of Georgia try to help eliminate the hog problem in the state?
Depends on what you mean by try to help eliminate the hog problem. Obviously, we are extremely aware of the hog problem, right? Hogs are a huge problem for commercial row crop agriculture producers. They're a problem for anybody concerned about soil and water health. They can contaminate waterways. They really are just a terrible scourge on the landscape, and they are fully established in most of Georgia. And there is a strong hunting tradition. There are a lot of folks who hunt feral hogs with dogs, and they've got a lot of dogs, and they spend a lot of time and energy on that traditional way of pursuing hogs. And so we certainly recognize that. We also recognize that when you're dealing with an animal that basically was domesticated to produce huge litters at least once, sometimes more often a year, you're fighting an uphill battle. And so there are farm bill programs, local programs, trap loaning programs, commercial operators. There are a lot of options. You can reach out to your soil and water conservation district. You can reach out to your extension agents. You can reach out to our region offices. There's a lot of options out there for assistance with dealing with feral hogs.
What are the criteria for counties to qualify for extended archery seasons?
So the extended archery season kicks in if the human population in a county exceeds 500 people per square mile. And as I mentioned earlier, that's an effort by us to put a tool in the hands of the local residents who want to use archery hunting to try and reduce or control their deer population.
Could we possibly do something about making the season a little longer, the deer season?
So in Tina's Dream World, we will have hunting season, and hunting season will open August 15th, and it will close February 28th, and you'll hunt what you want, when you want, with whatever weapon you want, and you'll kill as many as you want. But until we get to that utopian hunting season, we are going to have to parse out the fall amongst the different species and types of hunting that people want to do. And it's a balancing act, certainly. When you have firearms deer hunters out there in the woods, a lot of folks don't want to pursue small game with dogs for understandable reasons. And so there are a lot of potential conflicts out there in the woods. Most of the time, our hunters all accommodate each other pretty well. But we also have a role to play in that. And deer season right now in Georgia is one of the longest in the country. And having come from Georgia and being used to those long seasons, I've gone to other states where it's very short, and I definitely prefer, as a hunter, our longer seasons. But there is a statutory limit on how long they can be, January 15th and January 31st for firearms and archery right now. And so I feel like we have a really generous season, and we do need to make time for other folks to get in the woods without having to worry about those of us who choose to hunt with high-powered rifles during deer season.
Why do we not use physical tags for deer and turkey?
That is a great question. Our state, along with a lot of other states, have moved away from physical tags. We do still use them for some of our WMA hunts, and we use them for bears. And the reason for that is tagging an animal is a way to get that animal in our hands to collect biological samples. In a lot of cases, we don't need to collect biological samples, or we can get those samples some other way. Physical tags are expensive and burdensome on our hunters, and the data that were generated by that system were not always great. And so having folks report themselves via Game Check is a much more efficient and reliable system for us to get critical harvest data from our hunters.
Why the change in dates of the turkey season?
Another great question. As most of you know, across the entire Southeast, the turkey population in general is declining. It is highly variable on a local scale. One side of a county may have a good turkey population. The other side may have almost no turkeys. And the reasons for that are probably very multifaceted. We feel pretty confident based on research done not just here, but in some other states, and research done back in the 90s, to be honest, by some of the early turkey restoration pioneers, that showed that early turkey season is detrimental to the reproductive effort of that flock. And we know that now. We need to let those birds have that early season, the last part of March, to breed all the hens, let the hens get on the nest. Peak nest initiation and incubation initiation begins in Georgia about the second week of April. And so we are trying to reduce disturbance in the woods during that critical period when those birds are doing what they need to do to make the next generation of turkeys.
Can the public ask for help from WRD or government agencies to hog trap?
There is certainly technical guidance available from several different federal and state agencies, as I mentioned earlier. Your co-op agents, your soil and water district, your WRD local office, NRCS offices. All of these folks have information that they can share and tell you how to get in touch with trappers if you need to, or where to access traps and other supportive resources to do that really effective intensity whole sounder trapping.
What is the likelihood of seeing either sex archery days back for Northeast Georgia deer hunting?
I'm going to pitch that one to Mr. Charlie Kilmaster, deer biologist extraordinaire.
Hey everybody, I'm here answering questions in the background too. Those populations on the Chattahoochee National Forest, not the surrounding private lands, but on the forest, are still in a state of slow decline. So we are not likely to allow any female harvest at all on Chattahoochee National Forest east of I-75 until we can improve those conditions and get those populations in an upward trajectory.
Thanks, Charlie.
Many states are reducing their amount of non-resident turkey hunters. Is there any indication Georgia will be moving in this direction?
So non-resident hunters is always an issue for any state. Virtually every state, if not every state, charges considerably more for non-resident tags and hunting opportunities than what we residents pay. And that is in part to accommodate for the fact that most resident hunters are the ones who own the land and who are doing management. That said, they are a fraction of overall harvest. And so the last thing we want to do is start this war where states start shutting down hunting opportunity for non-residents. By law, wildlife belong to the citizens, and that includes non-residents. I mean, the last thing we would want to see is that you can't go out west to harvest an elk, which is not an option for us, obviously, here in Georgia. And so that is not a war we really want to start. There are better ways for us to manage harvest pressure on our turkeys than shutting out entire groups of hunters.
Why can't you hunt coyotes at night, but you can hunt foxes and bobcats at night?
Yeah, the room is looking around at each other for a quick answer to that, and we're going to invite one of our former region biologists to come speak to that.
From what I understand, it's been several years back that a federal game warden was killed by a night hunting coyote hunter, and I think that that's why that species in particular has just not continued to be available to hunt at night. I think it's,
And it is very much determined by local staff as well, but a lot of it is safety concerns, high-powered rifles at night. Hogs and coyotes are certainly a concern. And I will say with coyotes, the same principle applies as does with hogs. We certainly encourage people to get out and hunt coyotes. Predator calling and hunting is an incredibly fun way to spend an evening, but it is not a very effective way of controlling those populations. If you're really concerned about coyotes on your property, if you're concerned about damage to livestock, damage to native wildlife populations, those kinds of things, trapping is certainly the most effective route to go. That said, coyotes are here to stay, and we've got to learn to manage with them. We're not going to be able to eliminate them. You can remove them during certain times of the year to have a more beneficial effect, depending on what your goals are. But for example, on our WMAs, we certainly want people to go and hunt and enjoy that, but it is not necessarily a population control mechanism. All right, so the crew is telling me we've got to wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for tuning in tonight. Hope we didn't bore you to tears. And please, GM comments at DNR. Share it with your friends. Send us your comments. You can also call us, or you can send it by snail mail, whatever works for you. Just please do reach out and let us know what you think. And have a great evening. Thanks so much.